there, that looks like Mvula to me, and not Tingana. To be honest, I think this is Mvula in front of us. Maybe I'm wrong, but it could just be because of the weather conditions, and I'm just trying to check, but those ears are Mvula's ears. Those are not Tingana's ears. So there is Mvula, and Tingana is where we left him, is not far at all. And this is what Tingana was scratching around for this morning. So that is Mvula. How exciting is this? So we have two male leopards in the same area, and so even though we don't know where Tingana is right now, where we left him this morning, I promise you, is not even 300-400 meters away as the crow flies. So this is the cat that I'm pretty sure Tingana was sniffing around for this morning, and why he was so kind of sort of perturbed by what was going on, why he was moving so much, and why there was a lot of different kind of things going on. So it's really going to be interesting to see what plays out this afternoon, but that's a serious surprise. Like I say, the ears just didn't seem right from when we first saw him. You can see the ears are a lot more tatty on Mvula, and we got so lucky this morning that we were able to see Tingana's ears in close up, and that's why as soon as we got here we could see. And also his coat color is a lot lighter on Mvula. But how cool is it? We're in for an epic afternoon, I can tell you that much. Even though it's raining, it's still going to be very interesting to see what happens. Love Dogs, you say Mvula is your favorite leopard. Well, he is a beauty, isn't he? I like Mvula as well, and he's got so much character and so many stories and so many kind of experiences, and I think everybody that's had some time with Mvula somehow knows him and somehow has had an endearing experience with him, and that's why I think he's a favorite of many different people. He's really is a beautiful cat as well. When he was in his prime, the first time I saw Mvula, he had these beautiful blue colored eyes, and he was a big, thick, heavy set male. He was a real kind of gem of a leopard, and he was a wonderful individual to follow around. He used to kill a lot of prey animals far above his weight size. He also was very tolerant with other leopards, and that's, I think, one of his qualities that a lot of people kind of liked and a lot of people started to really enjoy about him, is that he used to kind of spend a lot of time with the younger males and not really too aggressive. He used to share kills from time to time, and so he's kind of developed as this individual that is a bit of an enigma in that he doesn't mind other leopards, and he doesn't mind sharing kills with younger individuals, even ones that are not his sons. So he's still been alright as long as it's been a younger male, and he's kind of gone nomadic, and yet he's still thrived. He still is in great condition. If you look at that leopard, he's not looking skinny in any way. His chest area is nice and thick and bulky, and so he still looks great, and that means that he's really still finding food, and he's kind of against all odds. Everybody always thought Mvula was just going to disappear into the abyss once Tingana came into this area and kind of took over. But you can see that when you are an experienced, wise male, well, things are very different. So Roshni, you say he seems a lot more approachable than Anderson or Tingana. Well, I can tell you one thing about Mvula is he's far better on when you track him on foot than Anderson and Tingana. Both Anderson and Tingana don't like to be found on foot. Both of them typically get up and run and try and move away from you, and then to keep up with them is very difficult. Mvula is a cat that will just look at you and as if to say, what are you doing here, much like Kosana. So he's a little bit different in terms of being able to track. In the vehicles, though, I find Tingana, Anderson, they do move a lot more than Mvula, but there's not really too much of a difference in terms of how they react to the vehicles. I mean, you saw Tingana this morning right around the car, all around us, looking, and Mvula keeps staring in that direction. I wonder if Tingana's not lying somewhere close by as well, and that these two might have even come into contact at some point in this morning's or during the day today. But most definitely he's very concerned about something that is to the west, and that is the area that Tingana was lying in and where we left him. So I wonder just what's going on. I think maybe we might have a sign of Tingana arriving in this general vicinity, and the saving grace for Mvula in terms of not being found is that it's raining, and the scent that he left behind is now going to be completely concealed by having this rain falling, and Tingana's going to battle a lot more to sniff him out than what he would have this morning. So interesting. It's definitely going to be an epic afternoon as we try and kind of keep up with them. The problem is we're right on the border, and so Tingana shows up, I'm pretty sure these two are going to run back into Buffelshoek, but I'm hoping that if Tingana does come, that maybe they go down south a little bit more, and we watch the two of them kind of go after this sort of territorial dispute. I have seen the two of them go after one another before, and generally what happens is Mvula just walks away. Mvula just doesn't entertain the process at all, and he just gets up and moves and tries to get out of that area. He's not interested in fighting with these dominant males. He's rather into trying to just get away. Now, interestingly enough, actually, if you watch where he is now and what he's doing, you may notice that he's just mouthing grass. So he's not actually biting grass at the moment. He's just kind of running his mouth on it. And what he's doing is he's gaining the moisture from the rain that is collected on the grass. I know the grass will be very wet, and so he's basically drinking water from the grass itself. So instead of having to go all the way to a water hole to go and drink, he can just sit right where he is and just lap up bits of water from the grass itself. How cool is that? Right, well, we're going to sit with Mvula for the remainder of the afternoon. And well, the old man himself is, I think, about to get sick, unfortunately. Oopsie. Oh no, not good. That's what happens when you eat grass, I'm afraid, is that sometimes you get sick like that. Now he's up and moving, as you can see, and unfortunately I think that just means that he's going to go to the north. I'm going to back up with him and hopefully be able to just keep reversing as he meanders down the road towards us, and that we won't have too many issues. I'm going to give him quite a bit of room because I don't want to push him to go northwards. I want him to keep coming west so that we can keep seeing him, and the reason why we quickly came to him is just in case he did start to go north. But at least in this way we can just kind of follow, well, not follow, he's going to follow us, and you can see just how relaxed this male is. I mean, I'm literally reversing with him kind of neck in front of us, walking straight towards us basically, and so he's looking up in the trees as well. I wonder if maybe he didn't get robbed of a kill this morning, and that's why we saw quite a few hyenas around. It could be the reason why, and here he keeps coming now, so I'm just going to keep going with him. Now we might get a bit of picture breakup as well because we are heading towards sort of Sydney's Dam area. We're going very slowly, so it should be okay for now, but if we do, I do apologize that there might be a bit of breakup. But look at this guy, isn't this just the coolest view? And there's those big paws, and I was saying just now that he still looks in great condition. He's got that dewlap still, and his body condition is good for a male leopard. He doesn't look bad at all. I mean, he's not in the same size category as Tingana. Tingana definitely is a bigger individual, but he is still looking really good. So I'm quite impressed actually with Mvula and what he's managed to kind of accomplish as an older individual. So it's been really good to kind of have him around over this winter. I didn't think I would ever get to see Mvula again, and you know, he's just kind of come out of the woodwork and has carried on and still is around. And look at that, he just is, I don't know, there's something about Mvula. I always like him. His eyes are absolutely incredible, particularly in kind of cold weather like this. Look at those blue eyes. They're so unique and very different to what we see from a lot of other leopards. Now I'm just trying to reverse a little bit and trying to get back and just trying to kind of get it into a position where VM can actually get a steady shot, because I know I'm making it quite difficult with VM while I'm reversing back like this. It is kind of not easy for VM to just get a steady shot, but there we go, VM, I'll just let you get one or two where we're not actually moving ourselves, and then he's just walking straight towards us, and he's completely not fazed by us doing what we're doing, which is quite amazing. It's an incredible thing to be able to do this with the leopard. Is not many leopards would actually allow us to kind of reverse like this and to keep kind of going and just move along with them along the road. Now I've got to be a bit careful of Aubrey because I don't know where Aubrey is, so I don't want to reverse into him. I know he came behind me somewhere and he's turning around, so what I'm probably going to do is just pull off to the side here and let Aubrey come past, or let Aubrey have a chance of him walking towards him, because that's how we do it, is we all got to have a little bit of a chance. And so I'm just going to try and pull off. The problem with this is that obviously VM's field of view is severely limited when I do this, and so there we go, VM, sorry, I'm going to try and get out of your way as much as possible as he comes past. As you can see, look, he's just going to watch us. Look at those eyes. Isn't that magical? Hello, boy. Wow. Special. As good as it ever gets, and there's no words that can describe just how cool that is when a leopard walks past you just like that. It is the best thing in the whole world. My day is good. When I have leopards like this, I always get so excited. Now, a lot of people often make fun of me because I'm a bit besotted with them, but how can you not be besotted with an animal like that and not enjoy spending time with them and kind of have that experience where this male walks right past you and kind of looks into your eyes like that. It's just the most epic thing, and I'm sure VM will agree. VM loves filming leopard, and so I'm sure VM will agree with me wholeheartedly on that point. Now, like I say, we are heading towards Sydney's Dam, and so Megs, I don't know if the signal is going to hold. It hopefully it will. Okay, so apparently the Mara's got a bit of technical issues, so I do apologize if there is a breakup in picture. We might unfortunately lose it. We do sometimes around here, but maybe, just maybe, with the new repeater, things will be a little bit better and we'll actually be able to keep signal in this particular section. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. It'll be epic if we can, and be a good test of the repeater that's now up and see how it actually is working. But here we go, we're just going to pop out in front again, and it's also with this roof and kind of rain covers that we have on, this is the easiest way for me to give VM a chance to actually film without kind of having to deal with all of these covers. These covers make it a lot more difficult for VM to film, and so if I can just keep straight on with them, then it makes life a lot better. Yeah, he's going to go to the toilet a little bit. Oh, you're giving us all your worst sides, Mvula. Throwing up and now defecating, never the best. Look at that, though. He is a magnificent male, though. I have all the time in the world for this individual. Foxy, this leopard is about 12 years old. Well, actually, he's now starting to approach 13 years old, so he's 12 and he's approaching 13, so he's an older individual. Remember, male leopards generally only live to about 12 to 14 years of age, and so it really is amazing that he's looking as good as he is. Now, I'm just trying to keep up with this kind of distance. I don't want a situation where he kind of feels that I'm too close and he veers off the road. I would rather we just keep backing up and giving him lots and lots of space as we go. But it's amazing with the rain kind of falling. The atmosphere is absolutely unbelievable. This driving kind of sheets of rain and this big male leopard just striding down the road. So epic. It is just the best thing. And I can deal with rain when I've got a leopard in front of me, that's for sure. Otherwise, I'm not such a huge fan, to be honest. Right, here we go. Now, hopefully, I'm not going to crash into anything. You can see my reversing skills are wild. Worry about one last look just yet, because Mvula is turning south, so he's walking deeper into Djuma now, which is fantastic news for us. It seems as though he's spotted something. He went up onto a termite mound, and look how he's walking. His whole posture has changed compared to when we saw him sauntering down the road towards us. He's now gotten into a lot more of a kind of poised position. He's watching, he's looking, his paws are moving a little bit more kind of circumspectly, and he's just kind of keeping an eye out on what's going on. Now, I don't know if potentially there's maybe some impalas around or something that he's spotted that he's interested in, but for sure there is something that Mvula wants to look at and wants to investigate. And I was saying to him, now this weather is perfect for a leopard like Mvula to move around. It's dark, it's dingy, it's wet, it's windy, and it's not going to be easy for prey animals to pick him up. And he loves hunting things like warthogs and porcupines and all kinds of random animals. In fact, his last kill, I believe, was a civet or a honey badger, something like that. So he managed to find himself some very odd meal, but he seems to be seeing something. What it is, I'm not quite sure. Now, I do need to quickly kind of reposition, because VM only can see in front where I can see, and so it's quite tough just to be able to kind of position ourselves a little bit better. How are you doing there, VM? Is that better? There we go. So I'm just going to stop here because I can't actually even see what's behind me, and I don't want to crash into something, but at least we can see him, and hopefully he goes up onto this mound again. The rain seems to have just be subsiding that little bit, and so I'm hoping he's going to go up onto the mound itself and settle. Now, I wonder, though, with us moving around and crunching through the bush, the hyena den is not far from here. I wonder if the hyenas are not going to show up, and that's maybe what he's seen, or if maybe Tingana is moving in this direction and he might have spotted something like that. But the way that he moved was almost towards something, so I think it's more a case that it's a prey animal that he spotted, maybe a little duiker or a steenbok or something like that in the grass. And you can see his coat's a little on the wet side, and he's been lying in the wet grass, and so that's what happens. And this little tail is not looking as pretty as it normally does. It's all a bit matted at this stage, but that's okay. He still looks good. And just now, I was looking at him, and yes, he could do with a meal, much like Tingana, but if you actually look at his structure and his body structure, he's not that thin. I mean, he's still got decent coverage around the shoulders. His hips are a little bit on the thinner side. I mean, they're not completely thin, but they're on the thinner side, and so hopefully he'll get a good meal and he'll be okay. Now, he did, like I say, whatever he ate was about, I don't even know, 2 days ago, was it, Vim? Yes, 2 days ago that he was on that kill. So whatever it was, I'm not quite sure what it was, but whatever it was about 2 days ago that he actually ate it. Now, what I think is I'm going to just try and reposition. He probably is going to move, but I'm just going to try and reposition for Vim so he doesn't have to look through all of these branches. There we go. No, he's on his way now, so he would just stay until I got round, but he's on his way, so I'm going to just try and get around myself. Now, I believe my signal is a little unstable and a little bouncy because of where we are, and so let's quickly link back across to Jimmy, who seems to be having the best day ever and is with a beautiful spotted cat of her own. Well, we are trying, Taylor, but we are failing absolutely miserably. It is coming down in sheets now, and it is really not very comfortable. And Mvula's trying to find a little place to tuck himself away. We're getting absolutely soaked where we are, so I'm going to have to try and come up with a different plan at the moment, because all of a sudden the wind kicked up and the rain is really coming down a lot harder than what it was just now, and so I'm going to have to try and position myself slightly differently so that we don't get absolutely smashed by the rain like we are currently. So our efforts to stay dry have well and truly been thwarted, and well, you can see Mvula is not looking at the happiest of cats at this stage. He is curled up as tightly as he can in as thick a bush as he can, and it was very funny to watch him. Shame, I had to feel sorry for him slightly, but what happened was he kind of went down there and he was about to sit down and he put his backside down, and he thought twice about that and thought, no, all these leaves and things are wet. And so then what he did is he took his paws and he scratched until he got to some dry sand and made a nice little nest for himself, and then he lay down inside there and is now curled up, and so he's not lying on cold wet leaves, but rather nice dry sand that he managed to dig up and find. So he's not looking as comfortable as he probably was a few minutes ago. Like I say, the weather is turning quite quickly now and getting quite horrid out here, and so our poor cat is just trying to keep himself as dry as possible, really. Now, Christine, you think that, well, you say that Mvula always seems to go for smaller prey. Is it because of his age? Well, there will be a part of that is age-related. So he's not quite as fast as what he used to be, always powerful. And so bringing down, fleet-footed animals like impalas is quite difficult. You'll find a situation where he'll probably find it much easier to hunt things like these civets or porcupines or those kind of animals, because they're not really as fast. And it's much easier for him to be able to get into a position where he can then catch them and feed off them. Things like warthogs as well, where you can sit at burrows and mounds and just wait it out and wait until those warthogs come, are probably better kind of prey items where, than something like an impala. It's not to say that he can't catch an impala. We know that a month ago, when he had that little altercation with the Nkuhuma pride, that he did indeed hunt an impala, a fully grown impala, and he managed to hoist it up a tree. So he's still powerful enough to do it, but it's much harder for him now. It's not as easy as it was when he was a lot younger. And I still think my favorite kind of leopard kill of all was Mvula hunting a young impala on Chitwa airstrip. It was just the most amazing thing to watch, and it was very cheetah-like in the way that he did it. It wasn't at all in the way that we see leopards hunting generally. He didn't stalk and take his time to get really nice and close. All he did was he just literally ran like a cheetah across that open area that's just on the western side of the airstrip and absolutely obliterated this poor impala that didn't even know what was going on. What happened, the herd just panicked and they all ran in different directions. I don't think anyone actually knew where he was coming from, and one just ran straight into him, and he unfortunately took it down. Well, fortunately for him, unfortunately for the impala. It was just the most amazing thing to see, though, this male leopard just streaking across an open area like a cheetah. I think Mvula didn't quite get the memo as to how to hunt like a leopard, and so he used to do it often. I used to watch him chasing all kinds of things in that way, and so unfortunately these days he's not quite as fit and as fast, and therefore those kind of techniques are not going to work as well. And so smaller prey items and slower prey items, more specifically in the form of things like porcupines, is going to be far easier for him. The problem with porcupines is porcupines can cause a lot of issues. And the thing about porcupines is that their quills get stuck in the coat, and we know with Salehesh that she had a few porcupine quills stuck under her coat that were infected, and it wasn't the main cause of her death, but it attributed to her unfortunately losing condition and possibly succumbing to other things, you know, that she had. And so porcupines are very dangerous for them to be able to kind of hunt and to be able to kill, and so they've got to be very careful. Now, Sinak, you are wondering how a leopard would go about killing a porcupine. Well, it's a very difficult process, but generally what they try and do is that they try and kind of just circle the porcupine more and more and more, and eventually try and kind of use their paws to flick the porcupine over, and so to try and turn the porcupine onto its side so that they can expose that soft underbelly and throat area and then grab it very quickly. Sometimes it doesn't quite work that way, and they get a few of those quills in the face, and they've got to then try and pull them out, sometimes in the paws. If it gets into the paws and the legs and the chest, it's not so bad because they can use their mouth and pull them out. But when it's a situation where it gets into the face, then sometimes it's very difficult for these guys to remove them, and it can cause a huge problem. But generally that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to use their paws to kind of flick the porcupine over and be able to get to it from the underside. Now, that technique is not a technique that only applies to leopards. Funny enough, back in the day when people used to hunt porcupines in these areas, and particularly in the Kalahari desert sections of South Africa, how they used to hunt them is by using either a thing called a bitter melon or a watermelon. And what they would do is they would find porcupines, and porcupines are quite actually easy to find at night. If you're in an area with a high density, just using a light and you walk around, you can generally find them quite quickly. And what they would then do is they would try and kind of corner that porcupine, and the porcupine would then put all of its quills up and try and shake its quills and rattle and try and kind of really intimidate you. And then they would take these watermelons and they would throw it on the porcupine, and that watermelon would then go onto the quills, and the weight of that would then force the porcupine to roll over and expose that underbelly, and then they would basically kill it with either a spear or a knife or something like that. It's not a very humane way of going after a porcupine, but I suppose it's pretty ingenious if you think about the tools that they had back in those days. It really was quite amazing. And so the leopards, or maybe that's how they learnt it, is from leopards and lions, and the way that they then hunted porcupines, maybe it's the same kind of technique. But I think what I'm going to do is sit with Mvula. This weather is easing off a bit now. The rain stopped slightly, and so I'm sure Mvula is going to take a nap, but hopefully later he's going to get up and start to move and start to actually try and maybe go on a hunt. And talking about hunting, my friend Brenti is sitting with those lions in the Masai Mara, and I believe that they are up and moving now, and they are on the hunt, so let's quickly jump across to him. That would be down in not so sunny South Africa. As you can see, even Mvula has decided enough is enough. Paw is over face, and it is all just really quite horrid out here. It is incredibly cold as well. It's pretty miserable, but well, it's still nice at least that we're getting some rain. It would just be nice if the wind would stop, because the wind is what's driving the rain past us and into our faces a little bit. So I think what I might do just now is reposition myself so that I can be a little bit more like Mvula, who has got his kind of paw across his face. And so what I want to try and do is try and get into a similar situation where I can use the car to kind of block us from this windy rain that's coming in from the southeast, because we're facing pretty much southeast at the moment, or south actually. And so if we try and just maneuver our backside a little bit, hopefully we should stay a little drier than what we currently are at the moment. But it's quite quiet out otherwise. I mean, Mvula obviously is just waiting for this rain to pass. He doesn't want to kind of move too far. He's, like I say, he's over it completely right now. It was quite funny just to watch him kind of tuck his head under his paw as if to just kind of cover his face from this horrible rain that's falling. And as much as it's quite a sad thing to see, you kind of feel sorry for him. I suppose it's nature, and this is the way it is, and all of them have to deal with it. And I can imagine there is many cats across this area where this rain is falling that look exactly like that individual does at the moment. Now there seems to be a couple little birds making a bit of noise around me, but I don't think we'll be able to see them. Sorry, you're not going to be able to see them because they're behind a bush that is behind me, which is where the rain covers are, and so you can just hear it. There's some red-billed buffalo weavers that are making a bit of a racket behind me at the moment, and so, but other than that, there's not much happening. I don't think we'll see too much movement of animals in this weather. I think only once it gets dark would we start to see the leopards starting to move around. Now, Foxhat, you're asking what the best tree is to shelter in the rain, or under in the rain. I don't know. I feel like Mvula's done pretty well. Guarri bushes are pretty much a good thing. I think maybe something large with the guarri bush under it, maybe something like a jackalberry with this guarri bush growing underneath would probably be the best, because you get a nice kind of big tree which provide quite a bit of shelter, and then the little guarri bush. But anywhere you hide water, unfortunately, is that way that it just finds its way through and you'll get dripped on. And so for the animals, generally this is what you see, is that leopards and will try and lions will try and kind of fit themselves into a thicket like this. And you can actually see he's quite clever about what he's done. There's a slight raised section, and that will be blocking the wind that is coming from that southeast, that he's kind of lying on the northwestern corner of this little mound of soil or termite mound that has developed here. And so he's getting a bit of protection from the wind and even a bit of the rain that's coming down, and he's kind of protected himself with a bit of the guarri bushes that are also protecting him from rain. So he's done quite well. So guarri trees are good ones, jackalberries, cape ashes, nyala berries, all those really big trees. And if you can find one with a bit of vegetation underneath, the low-lying shrub like a guarri, then you're really for away, and you're going to win completely with what you're doing. So that's what I would suggest. But you can see Mvula is wet. He's covered in water. He looks much like we do, and he's all matted. His fur is kind of damp, and he must be a little cold as well. And you'll find that the poor cats in this weather, they actually use a lot of energy, even though you would think in the heat they would lose more. But trying to stay warm in this is really quite tough. You'll find a situation where he kind of has to curl up, and I'd imagine they do get a little bit of a kind of shivers as they are. I mean, it's the body must be working hard to try and stay warm and to try and keep that body temperature up. See, like, I don't know, I've never seen a leopard occupy a den of another animal in weather like this. I suppose they could. Most definitely cubs would do it. So if cubs were left alone, you'd find them crawling into maybe a termite mound or into a little rocky outcrop that might be used by other animals. But most certainly they would be very, very careful of going into places where there could potentially be something dangerous. Remember that a lot of these areas that provide shelter house all kinds of dangerous animals. Things like warthogs, which we know can cause damage to a leopard. There's hyenas, there's snakes, there's, those kind of things that ultimately are not very pleasant to share a bedroom with in cold, wet weather. You're not going to want to go down a dark burrow and then meet up face to face with a black mamba or a snouted cobra. And so leopards generally will just lie out like this under a bush. Same with lions. Young individuals will go into their little den sites where they've been left. Remember that leopard cubs generally are left in their dens for the first 3 months. If they're that kind of age, then they are going to be going into some sort of shelter, whether it be a rocky outcrop or a termite mound or a kind of hole in a riverbank or something like that, where they can then get out of this wet weather and stay nice and curled up and warm and out of the wind more than anything else. While we've been sitting here, the rain is actually not that bad. That's not too much of a worry, and it's not too much of a stress. It's the wind that is so cold, and it's driving the rain into places where it normally isn't. And so especially for us, it's kind of blowing the rain into us, and that's what's making it so cold this afternoon. It's not actually the rain itself. Without the wind, when the wind doesn't blow, it's fairly pleasant. As soon as the wind does get up, then it becomes a little bit more of an issue. So if they can get out of the wind, then they can stay a lot warmer. Chastity, so I was waiting for somebody to pick up on this, because you say that Mvula means rain. Yes, it does mean rain, and it's a very apt leopard to have found, or any animal actually. Out of all of our animals here, he's got the most apt name to be able to see on a afternoon like this. So it was kind of written in the script and perfectly suited for our afternoon's weather. It definitely is a rainy weather with a soggy leopard, and the reason he got his name like that, and people might wonder, if those that are new to the show, that he was called Mvula because of rain. No, it's not because of that. It's because of his eye color. So his eye color almost looks a little water-like, and so there was already a leopard in this area when he arrived that was called Mati. Now Mati means water, and so they couldn't call him that, and so they went for the next thing, which was rain, and that is Mvula. And it's actually a very good friend of mine that gave the Mvula name to this leopard. He's now down in Sabi, in the west of the Sabi Sands, but he was the one that came up with that name. And so it's a interesting name, and I suppose it does suit him, and I quite like it. So I like the name Mvula. It suits our old lad, and his eyes are absolutely exquisite, and so it does look a little bit kind of like water and raindrops, and so fair enough name. Right now, though, he's not showing any of those beautiful eyes. He's decided that he's going to curl up and stay warm and just try and wait out this horrible rainy weather. It looks as though we're in a little bit of a gap now, so if we look towards the sky at the moment, I know it's difficult for VM because of all the rain covers, but if you look towards the sky, it's kind of whitish, but in the distance is dark and black and ominous, and I think what's going to happen is what we're going to experience the whole afternoon is just waves of rain coming through. So it's almost like these little sheets that come down, and it kind of blows through for a bit, and it's horrible, and then it goes off and we get a little hiatus like we have now and a bit of brighter conditions, and then that darkness is going to push through again. So I think we're in for another little bout probably in the next sort of 15-20 minutes or so, given how much the wind is blowing. I would imagine we're going to get a nice little downpour and probably get not very comfortable at all. And so we'll have to try and kind of reposition ourselves a little bit and try and figure out a way to just be a little bit more kind of sheltered than what we are now, because if it does start raining quite hard now, we're going to get very, very wet. I've also been listening out quite carefully, trying to hear if there's been any signs of Tingana maybe moving around while we've been sitting with Mvula, in case maybe he's been kind of following the scent and following the trail, but we haven't heard any alarm calls or any sounds of anything. The only thing that's starting to call now is a few insects and maybe even some frogs, and so we'll listen out for more. I was about to say, Brent, if you're calling me old kitty cat, I feel like Jamie might have a problem with it, and while I also would have a serious problem with it, I don't really want to be referred to as an old kitty cat, and especially not by another man. Anyway, let's not get into that at all. You can see Mvula is still not very comfortable. It just came down in a deluge again. It's now easing up, and so he's trying to get himself into a dry position, and shame, he's looking very sorry for himself. I'm sorry, boy. Is it horrible out here today? I know, it's not very pleasant. I feel your pain. I'm also all damp and kind of trying to hide from the rain a little bit. We repositioned slightly, so we're in a different kind of angle, and it's helping a little bit with the pouring rain that comes down every now and then. We're not getting as wet as what we were just now, but shame, this poor leopard is not feeling up to it at all. He's decided, nope, I'm going to stay right here. Every now and then there's a gust of wind and droplets seem to be hitting him on the face and the nose, and he tries to then groom it out. But it really is not very pleasant weather for a cat. But look at those eyes. Are they not just the most magnificent color? I know there's some leopards out here that have amazing colored eyes, and Hosana's got beautiful kind of deep orange, and Tumba with his green eyes are also captivating. But for me, a blue-eyed leopard or light-colored-eyed leopards are just some of the best. And so Mvula, Anderson, Tiani, those eye colors are just some of the most standout and contrasting colors out of our leopards here, and they really are fascinating when you get to watch them and see those kind of types of leopards, because it's not a common thing to see. I suppose in this area it seems to be fairly common if you think that there's 3 leopards that are alive and moving around within the section that all have this lighter bluish tinged eye color. It's pretty amazing. You go into other parts of the Sabi Sands and you see very little of it. In fact, down in the south I didn't see any that had any kind of color remotely like it. Heba with a B, I think that is what Megan says. But Heba, you are asking how long do leopards last without a meal? Well, obviously it depends on what their previous meal was. But let's say they had a massive meal and they're fully, totally saturated with food. They have as much as they could possibly stomach, full belly. They'll probably look at about 2 weeks until a leopard would be absolutely emaciated and really struggling. The problem with a leopard is that even though they might go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, once they start going over 7 days without food, they start to, basically cannibalize their own body, and it ends up with a situation where they're going to start kind of getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and then it becomes harder and harder to hunt. And so the more days they go, even though they might still be able to survive a little bit longer, it becomes harder, and it actually accelerates that kind of starvation process if they're not able to hunt, because they basically get to the point where they can't hunt. So it's a horrible thing to see. I've seen lions and even leopards get to that point where they're so old that they're starting to really struggle. Safari was one of them. So for those of you who don't know who Safari was, she was a female leopard and the grandmother of Hosanna, effectively, and Shongile, so it was Karula's mother, and she lived to about 19 and a half, and it was a really sad thing to watch her in a way. It was great because she lived to such a ripe old age, and it was phenomenal to see a leopard get to that age. But it was sad in that we watched this icon from this particular area literally waste away, and she just went from, this kind of healthy individual, even though she only had the one eye that was, in good condition, and slowly but surely her body just kind of consumed herself. And then towards the end, her teeth were worn, they were almost pebble-like, her claws were not as sharp as they were, and she literally basically starved to death in the end, and it was a horrible thing to watch. I didn't really enjoy the last kind of month of seeing her. It was a hard thing to watch. It's never nice to see an animal that is suffering like that. She was literally just looked like a skeleton that had a leopard coat on it. But at the end of the day, the thing is, every time we used to see her and think, well, this is going to be the end, we'd find her with a scrub hare or something like that, or a lizard or a bird, and she just kind of clung on and kept going and going and going. It was actually really incredible just to see how much will to survive she had. It was a hard thing, but it was an amazing thing as well. Now, our sleeping cat is curled up, feeling very sorry for himself and feeling a little on the miserable side. So I'm going to try and sit with him for a little bit longer and just see if he gets up. I believe Taylor has also got some rather sleepy kitties on her side of the world. Well, I'm not so sure I would call this evening beautiful. It's beautiful in that we're getting rain, Jamie, but as you can see by Mvula and, well, probably me as well, we look a little bit like drowned rats this afternoon, and so it's very cold and very unpleasant out here. But it has a leopard, and that means that it's probably, yes, it is very beautiful. In fact, the fact that we can look at a spotted cat while we're sitting here makes it the best afternoon possible. Right, but while I've been sitting here, I've been thinking about all kinds of other things to talk about while we were kind of sitting with Mvula, and so I was looking at all the insect life that is accumulated in our roof over the sort of dry period, and there was a few that came sort of tumbling out of my rain cover earlier, and there's two examples here, and one is, I actually don't know what either. I think they're both part of the shield bug family. I'm not 100% sure which one is, or what each one is, but they have the most magnificent colors. This one here is like a little orangey red color, and it has that typical kind of sort of shield bug shape. And then the one on the left is a bright green, almost cicada kind of looking. It's got massive black eyes. It's very interesting. I've honestly never seen the green one before. These little orange ones I've seen flying around from time to time, so I would hope maybe somebody can help me as to what each one of these beetle species is. I'm not 100% sure. Like I say, I'm sure that this one here is part of the shield bug, but I'm not 100% sure about the little green one. And you can actually see how big these are. These are tiny. If you come out a little bit for me, Vildi, then you'll see my fingers in relation to the size of the bugs. Oh, and we've got a visitor. Look what's coming. It's running at speed. Is a praying mantid little baby. There it comes. Is it going to come and try and feed off of these dead insects? How cool will that be if that happens? So there's our praying mantid. It's coming through from the rain. Maybe it's trying to seek shelter itself into the car. I think, come on, little mantid, come get some shade or some shelter. It's raining out there. Come join us on this side of the dry world. Shame. It must be horrible to be a little insect in this kind of weather. This cold must really affect them. But how cool is that little creature? So there we go. This just shows you that there's life that abounds all over the place. Sometimes we sit here and we think, well, there's not really much going on, but all you have to do is look on your dashboard and a multitude of different things start to arrive. And this is the best part about this rain, is that not only are we going to get green grass and growth of plant life that we really do need and desperately need, but we're going to get a lot of arthropods coming out. And the arthropods are some of my favorite things to look at. They really are super interesting. There's a whole different world that goes on just underneath our eyes, and we often easily overlook it. And a lot of people are absolutely petrified about insects, but they are really absolutely wonderful things. They have a lot of personalities, some of them, and a lot of really interesting little traits. And so I'm quite happy to see our little insects. It's kind of like a little toy section that's all kind of around. And look, the mantid is going to go feed on them. Or it's going at least to go and investigate. How cool is that? So I put that little green thing on there. It's a dead insect. It's not alive in any way. But look, the mantis has come to investigate to see what's going on. How cool is this? Now, normally mantises would feed, or mantid would feed on a live animal. I've never seen them scavenging before, so I'm really interested to see what it does. It's definitely curious about these insects, so I wonder what it's doing. That's so cool. Let's see if it'll actually start to kind of feed off it, if it's just coming to investigate. I wonder if it just came to kind of check what they are and just to see if it is a viable food source, or maybe if it was alive. No, it's decided it's going to move off now. So that was super interesting. I've never seen them kind of investigating dead insects before, but clearly this mantid wanted just to check what this green object was. You see how it completely ignored the orange one and went towards the green one. I wonder if it thought maybe it's another mantid that it was just coming to inspect and just to see what's going on with it. Super interesting. But you can see why they're called praying mantises. So when it kind of stops, hopefully, when it... Why can't you say that it's bug wars? Yes, it seems like it. I think the more rain we have, and as soon as we get a bit of sunshine, there's going to be a lot of bug wars. But I was saying you can see why it's called a praying mantid, but you can't now because it's now changed its position and it looks a lot different. But when it was up higher, you would have seen that the front legs were curled up and almost in a preaching position, as though they're praying, and so that's where they get their name from. And what's really interesting with them is the way that they actually curl their kind of tail section, if you want to call it a tail section, their abdomen, up over their body, and then they hold it up like that. And I'm not 100% sure what the reason is for it. Some do it a lot more than others. You'll find that this particular young one is doing it a lot. It kind of rears it up only when it stops, though, and I wonder if it's maybe just to make itself appear a little bit larger. It almost has a spider look to it when it sits like this, and maybe that's why it does it. Maybe it's just to try and fool other predators that it's something that is dangerous and not to be eaten. You can also see that it's an insect that rely heavily on its eyesight. Look at the size of its eyes in comparison to its body. Massive, big, bulbous eyes on either side of the head. Now, those will be made up of lots and lots of different lenses together. So it's a compound eye. It's not like ours, which is a simple eye, and we have one lens. This has lots and lots of lenses on it, and that means it can detect movement very well. It just doesn't judge distance that well, so it's a bit of a difficult one for that, but it will detect any little bit of movement because each one of those eyes is going to have some sensory cells. How cool is this? Now, Lynn, it is a baby praying mantis. Remember, we're just coming into our summer months now. We've just started to have a bit of rain and heat, and so a lot of the insects are only now starting to hatch and come out. And so this is one of those examples. It's just a little tiny one that's probably come out of an Uthika recently. So the egg case for a mantid is called an Uthika, and you'll find that these Uthikas, depending on the mantid species, will be either very small or quite big. And it's amazing. I've seen Uthikas about that size, where there's probably easily 100 mantis that come out of a little Uthika that size. It just kind of pops open and almost looks like cotton inside. And in fact, I've actually got a photo of it. I'll try and find it quickly and see if I can show all of you. It might take a little bit of time because I need to pull it up from somewhere, and my hands are so wet and wrinkly that my phone is not going to even register my fingerprint, which is quite weird. So we'll have to dry that off at some point and just try it again. But while we kind of try and look for this photo, you can see Mvula is still very fast asleep and taking it very easy. He's not going to move anytime soon. I think he's decided, you guys are welcome to sit in the rain and talk about insects and various other cool things. I'm going to have a little nap, and I suppose rightly so. It's really nap weather. So don't worry, Mvula, I thoroughly agree with you. Now, I'm trying to find these photos as quick as I can. It's going to take me a bit of time because it was quite some time ago that I took, well, that they were on my Facebook. So there it is, actually. That was quite quick. It was much quicker than I thought. So here we go. I'm just going to put that down there. But that is what a mantis egg looks like. So that's a little Uthika that you can see there. And so this is the egg encasing, and then all the mantids actually start coming out of it. So that's the tiny mantid, which is about the same size as the one that we're seeing. And that's a piece of grass that you see underneath there with this Uthika attached to it, and then the mantid coming out. But it's really an incredible sort of shape and an incredible kind of little concept, and lots of little eggs inside there. And you find these Uthikas quite a lot in the summer months, so you'll see them kind of being formed, and you find them on grass, and they're kind of a soft, almost spongy sort of feel to them, almost like a loofah, if I can explain it like that. That's how they are. And I've actually been fortunate enough to see a mantid actually make one of these, so sit and watch it from start to finish, where it just started to kind of produce a little bit of the stuff, and it secretes it out of its body, and eventually it secretes this long Uthika, and depending on the species, the shape of it will be different, and it will have a slightly different kind of way of doing things. So really very cool insects. I absolutely love the mantids. They are amazing. Right, now this leopard is starting to kind of just groom himself. The rain is still coming down. I'm not sure if he's going to get up, but with the rain falling the way it is, us driving around is not going to be very pleasant. And so I'm going to sit here for a little bit longer and see if he does decide to get up and move. And while I do that, I believe Taylor McCurdy is on a roll and has found herself some more predators, and hopefully they'll be on the move soon. Well, yes, unfortunately we have to play the patience game. The weather is not indicative of a racing around finding animals game, and well, we've got one, so we might as well sit with him for a bit longer. He's kind of turned his back on us as if to say, well, I'm tired of showing you my face. And what amazes me is while we're sitting here and watching him is just how well he blends in when he's kind of facing away from us. The darkness of his back, if you see there how the coloration just absolutely blends in this black and white kind of monotone color of the IR, it actually becomes very difficult to make him out in that thicket, and it is starting to get quite dark now, unfortunately. And so I think Mvula hopefully is going to get up and start moving at some point. For now he's kind of stationary, and he has groomed himself a little bit, and there's a lot more signs that he's awake than there were a little bit earlier. He's not at least curled up anymore. He's quite sort of stretched out. The rain is starting to subside a little bit, and so I'm hoping that we are going to go on a little bit of a hunt fairly soon. Well, that's the idea anyway. We're going to try and hopefully stick it out and see if anything happens for us. But our mantis is still with us and just taking it very easy and just sitting on the dashboard. I think it's found a nice place now. Maybe with the light, it's decided that this is a good place to sit and to just absorb some nice light. So it's still sitting just over there, and you can actually just see how big it is. If you wanted to get an idea, there's my finger next to it. So it is absolutely tiny. This little one is a newly hatched mantis that has just come out of that Uthika, which is really, really cool. Now, I'm hoping that this poor little thing is going to be able to stay in the car for the ride home when we do start heading home, because then it will get a nice covered, sheltered area where it can dry off and stay out of this horrible weather, and this little insect hopefully can then survive. Although, going towards where we are and where the car is parked, I'm sure there's a number of little geckos and various other lizards that wouldn't mind a small mantis snack in the middle of the night. And so this little one is going to have to be very careful, and hopefully it won't end up with any problems. Super cool though. Just shows you that sometimes there's lots of stuff right under your nose. Now, Roshni, the eggs, you're asking what the eggs are made out of. Well, the egg itself is pretty much like most insects, is that they lay an egg. The difference with the mantid is that they spin what's called an Uthika. Now, the Uthika is essentially very similar to like a foam nest tree frog. It's a foam that they release, so there's a high moisture content in it, and it then eventually dries into that kind of hardened egg case with, so VM's just trying to get some lighting that's a little bit better because it won't show up on the infrared. It's a bit close, and I also don't want to be blinded by the infrared. And so it's a foam that is kind of that is secreted. It eventually starts to dehydrate and forms a rather sort of fibrous material. What that material is actually made out of, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some protein base to it, and so I'm not 100% sure of exactly what the composition of that foamy structure is. I'm sure there must be some part of their digestive tract that aids in getting nutrients and those kind of things. And given that mantis are predators, they hunt other insects, I'm sure it's a protein-based secretion that's mixed with moisture that then basically causes that fibrous egg casing that surrounds the eggs and protects the eggs from predators and also from dehydration in the end of the day. It's much like what the foam nest tree frog does in essentially in the same way. Now, talking about foam nest tree frogs, we should hopefully start hearing them. They should be around. VM was telling me a story about how he's gotten himself 2 foam nest tree frog pets, haven't you, VM? Yes, VM has now got one in his washing bag, apparently, that is in the laundry room. So there's now one that's his friend there, and another one that's in your room, VM?
Yeah.
Yes.
On my bed last night.
On his bed last night, and apparently it's a very nice frog. You can stroke it, and that it doesn't run away. So VM has found himself a new friend in his room. Now, VM, don't kiss the frog, because it's not going to work. You're not going to get something coming out.
Well, he was sleeping on my toothbrush.
Was he sleeping on your toothbrush? Well, then indirectly you did kiss the frog, VM. So VM's been kissing frogs, apparently. and brushing his teeth with the aid of a foam nest tree frog. Now, we should start hearing a lot of those foam nest tree frogs coming out, and I'd imagine they would love one of these little praying mantis to come along their way. They obviously are carnivores, most frogs, and they'll eat all kinds of little insects and various other things. So very, very cool. Now, I was thinking about earlier when we were kind of talking about insects, and before I changed the topic of the mantises, Mary, you were wondering how many how many little ones will come out of an egg case like that. Between 100 and 200 is about the number, so anywhere between there. I know it's a vague figure, and 100 and 200 is two very different numbers, but generally that's about what you get out of them. It depends obviously on species and all kinds of other things, but it's a general kind of situation that you'll get. Now, Mvula is starting to perk up a little bit and is kind of starting to get a little bit more sort of aware of his surroundings. It is starting to get nice and dark now, and so I would think that Mvula is definitely going to start getting up and moving at some point. If we're just patient enough, hopefully he will reward us and he will start moving around and trying to find some sort of food item, although he's starting to settle back down again. And I was saying that we were going to continue our insect discussion, and I was going to move away from the mantises, and I forgot completely this morning to show all of you what a lunar moth actually is. We were talking about the tail streamer of a lunar moth, and I was telling all of you that it is a lunar moth, but I didn't actually show you what a lunar moth is. For those of you that don't know what a lunar moth is, and our little quiz this morning, this is a lunar moth right here. Now, lunar moths are quite common in our summer months. It is absolutely beautiful moth. It's this bright green, and that's that tail streamer that I found in the car. Now, unfortunately, this moth must have lost its tail streamer, the tail streamer we found. I hope it wasn't guzzled by something, but it will be somewhere around, and unfortunately probably at the end of its life. Now, in terms of size of this lunar moth, it is probably, if I had to put it on my hand, about the size of my palm. So it would probably stretch all around there with quite wide wings that go over. So it's a really large moth, but absolutely beautiful. They're one of my favorite moths to find. And in the summer months, if you drive around just before rains, generally, like what we saw today or last night, you'll find them sometimes sitting on tambuti trees. So tambuti trees, I find, are one of the good places to look for lunar moths. They're often sitting on the tambuti itself or on the leaves, and sometimes even on the trunks of marulas you can find them there. And then obviously anywhere where there's lights in a bush environment, you generally find a lot of moths coming in, and the lunar moths are there with them. So beautiful, beautiful species, and hopefully one day we'll find one on one of the trees, and maybe on a bushwalk or even in a car. Because it's big enough, we can actually show you exactly what goes on with them. They really are one of my favorite moths that we get. All right, Mvula, it's time for you to start moving, young lad, or old lad. There we go. Now, Roshni, you're saying, I've got you so excited for the bushwalk soon. Now, I'm trying to put lights on because VM doesn't want to always use the infrared. Like I was saying, the infrared is a little bit of a problem for when I am looking at the camera, because it can blind me. So there's Mvula just looking around. Now, Roshni, in terms of bushwalks, I'm excited to be doing bushwalks again. Now with a bit of rain, lots of insect life. I know James is coming back, and I'm pretty sure James is going to want to be on foot quite a bit. Steph, as we know, is just a bushwalk king, and so it's going to be a fun time ahead. And there's so much that can happen with bushwalks. We can have so many different things going on, and you get to kind of see all these microscopic things. And I mean, just now we've sat and we've discussed this at length, some of the insects, and this is just 3 of millions of insects that we get here, and there's so much to see. And bushwalk is the best thing when looking for arthropods, flowers, and any of those kind of things. It really gets you to delve deep into things that we just don't see from a vehicle and that we often miss out on. It's amazing to spend time with cats, and amazing to spend time with a number of the animals that we see out here, but getting down and dirty at kind of eye level with insects and all the others is also just as epic and just as special. And there is so much to learn about the arthropod world that we also just don't understand. There's so many insects that even amongst our entire presenting team, that there'll be insects that we don't know and that we're learning about constantly, and every year seems to be a different insect that comes out in mass that we can kind of learn about. And I saw the other day that Brent had an incredible sighting in the Mara of just sitting with thousands of fruit chafers, and that looked almost like the winged allets of termites coming out, but it was fruit chafers flying all around him. Absolutely insane. And VM and I actually had a similar experience the other day. We had a bit of rain and we were driving back, and it was just we were being bombarded by fruit chafers falling from the marula trees. It was absolutely incredible. So the insect world is a very special one as well, and one that is something great to delve into, and not only bushwalks but tent is also a great thing for the insect world. Now Mvula's up, which is good news, so we're going to probably hope that he's going to start moving. Seems as though he's kind of looking off towards where he came from, so I'm hoping that Tingana's not approaching from behind us, although he seems like he might be moving. A bit of a yawn going. So are we going to start moving now, young man, or old man should I say? I can't call him young man. I'm so used to hanging around with the youngsters in the form of Hosanna and Tumba. Oh, he's going around the side, sorry VM, but he is up and moving, so I'm going to try and turn around so that I can keep up with him, because we're the only car here, and so it's very difficult for me to keep up with him if I can't see him. So I'm going to need to turn around quickly, and hopefully our patience is going to be rewarded. The nice thing is he's also heading the right direction to not get thoroughly covered in rain, going northwards, which is fantastic news. Well, we managed to get him again. He's now moving up Vuyatela access and looks as though he's going to head slowly more towards the west and probably cross over into Simambili fairly shortly. He's just meandering his way up the road, so we're going to try and keep up with him. Hopefully the signal will be okay as we go northwards with him and try and kind of keep up on the same sort of route as he's walking. It was a bit of a nightmare to keep up with him through the thicket that we came through from Sandy Patch, but, well, it seems to be worth it. And what's interesting is that there must be a fair amount of rain on the roads, because a fair amount of rain that's come down, because there's puddles that are on the roads at the moment and developing, and so there's a fair amount when you start to see puddles actually on the roads itself. So they're the puddles that I was talking about that Mvula's walked past. I thought he might drink out of one, but I don't think they're deep enough just yet. He was chasing a scrub hare just now. Unfortunately, the scrub hare was far too far. He ended up losing it, but he's still watching. There was a scrub hare actually that just ran across the road, so he's just stopping and having a little look. Kind of just keep Mvula, if he heads towards Triple M, we should pick up signal again, but before we lose signal, let's quickly jump back across to Taylor. So I might as well keep talking, but let's go across to her now.